Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back for our next Grace at the Table forum. We have a new topic today, and we're excited to dive in. So before we get started, we're going to go around in a circle and introduce the panelists that we have for today and what they're doing up here. So we'll start over here and work our way around. It's on.
George Healer, I'm also a pastor here at Grace.
And I'm Buddy the Elf. What's your favorite color?
For real, though.
Brandon, one of the pastors.
There we go. All right. He's like a Christmas explosion today, so we're just accepting that for what it is.
Just hoping for an
It's a lot to take in, so brace yourselves. So today, before we get started, we're going to pray real quick, and then we're going to go ahead and dive right in with the time that we've got. So who's willing to pray for us?
I will.
All right.
Well, Lord, thank you for this opportunity to get together and to talk about Christmas and to talk about you and how we can most glorify you, how we can celebrate Christmas and just the joy that it brings. We ask that you would lead us and guide us through this time. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you. All right. So today's topic, we're dealing with Christmas, the secular aspects and evaluating a lot of those. So our starting question we're going to open up with is, what do you think about Santa?
We're just jumping right in.
Yes, we're just going to go for it because it's the big man, you know? We're going to talk about him first, so we're going to dive right in. So what do we think about Santa?
Everyone wants to know, what do all the pastors think about Santa?
This is the question.
You mean, is he real or not?
No.
Parents,
We're not
cover
going
your kids'
there.
ear.
No. We want to know, as a believer, what do we think about how we handle the issue of Santa? So do we have Santa? Do we ignore Santa? Like, do we sort of bring him in and talk about him in a different kind of way where we acknowledge that he's there, but it's like, just so you know, he may or may not be real or whatever we're doing here. So, like, how do you approach
Not
dealing?
real?
May or may not. That was a very open comment I just made. Can take it any way you want.
Clearly an adult conversation.
Yes. So, I mean, we warned people. This question was on the announcement. People know we're going to talk about this. So, with all honesty, how do we deal with the issue of Santa? What do we think? How do we interact with it? What are you guys thinking as believers, not just as people?
Well, I love Santa. I think Santa is great. Now, I didn't raise my kids with Santa as the center of Christmas. We raised him with Jesus as the center of Christmas. But Santa is a great vehicle for the narrative, for telling the story. And I think that's the key is every opportunity that you've got to tell that story is to use it. And Santa's one of those. You know, if you go back into the story behind Santa, it's a great story to talk to kids. And then we can talk about, you know, the elements of that have kind of gone astray or been hijacked. You know, we've got a great narrative, and we have the truth. And you know, it's interesting. The world wants to come and to steal and to vandalize things. And what do? We sneak around and leave gifts and leave surprises and things like that. So, Santa's not anything to be afraid of, but he's a great vehicle to use for the story.
So did you guys do Santa and presents, presents from Santa with your kids?
We did not. You know, but we explained early to the kids that's who Santa was, and that you know there'd be family members that would be talking about him, and that we were not to blow his cover. And I think our kids always felt like they were kind of read in on that whole process. So no, and because I said we want you to know where the gifts come from. So.
And follow-up question to that, since your kids at this point are older, they're not still in the little kid window range. So as adults or young adults, whatever you would want to classify, how would they feel about how you handled that now? I'm just curious on the back end of that, because there's always the process and then there's the effects of that process. So how are they at this point?
The cause and the effect, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and great question. That's why we have you as our moderator. But because I went back to all four of them and said, hey, tell me what you remember about our traditions, what we did and didn't do. And they all brought up the fact that we didn't, you know, celebrate Christmas or didn't celebrate Santa. We did, I'm sorry. Yeah, we didn't, That's right. Well, that place is empty now. That we didn't, you know, Santa was not the center of the celebration, and that they all knew it. And to this, none of them have issues with that. I think many of them still have family members that are doing that kind of thing, but they're they're all very comfortable with it, and I don't want to say that they're all doing exactly the same thing because I'm not positive, but and the effect is that they're fine. And I think it was, again, they kept saying you kept using it as the way to tell the story, and that's what they really liked.
They're fine. You didn't mess up your kids.
No, but
No therapy
so they would love
after that.
instead of the Santa thing, we would go back and we would act out the nativity, and they loved that. That was one of the things that they really enjoyed. That they remember a bunch of years later.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it's been a while. I have to go back and remember what we did, but I can't tell a lie here because the moderator will correct me.
I'm his kid
Since
for
she
anyone who
lived through
doesn't
that.
know.
But I think the way we dealt with Santa is, I would just say we just kind of dealt with it plainly and simply and factually. We explained kind of what Christmas was about. We kind of centered things on that, but we explained that, hey, a lot of people, this is kind of what they think, and this is why they do that, and, a lot of kids really. So I don't think you were Santa spoilers, where you didn't go around and say, oh, Santa's not really real to kids that believe.
I will not reveal which of the two of us may or may not have ruined it for somebody, but it did happen, and it was a bit of a moment. But we got past it. That's all I'm going to say. But generally, no, I don't think we were running around telling everybody.
So I think we just dealt with it, like this is just part of the world we live in. This is the way some people relate to it. And, here's why, here's what it's all about. And I think we tried to just help people understand what Santa meant and how he was a part of Christmas for some families and why they did that. And it kind of took some of the mystery out of it, I think.
Yeah, I actually agree with that, because I think, he's everywhere, so you're kind of like, okay, there he is, I get it, but you're not super into it in a way that you're, invested in him as the person. And it does kind of, I don't know, I think it does bring some balance to the whole gifts at Christmas kind of time, which is something maybe we can talk about a little bit later as we get into the time, but this whole performance-based gift-giving routine that you can slip into, very a la Elf on the Shelf, where he's watching and sending back a report for your behavior that's motivating you. That was really, it sucks that out of the story, which I think for us, we were okay with, because that wouldn't have been the basis for our obedience in our household anyway. It wasn't somebody's watching you and you're going to lose a present if you don't do this. It was you're supposed to obey the same way all year round. So this is irrelevant to the gift giving, but the gifts are not performance-based either, which is a really good reflection of,
and
what's
knowing
happening
that you were
at
on the
Christmas.
naughty list, you were happy to not be on it.
That probably did. That probably was helpful, yes. Because imagine if I had thought performance-based on some of those things. That it's an interesting question how that would have affected the way that I viewed, cause and effect for my performance as a small child. Because I think I could easily see myself making that connection of, I was bad, so no blessing. It does provide a good opportunity to talk about grace, because, if you're just sitting there thinking that, well, if I'm bad, I get bad stuff. If I'm good, I get good stuff. The real world doesn't provide something that simple. There's a lot of things that happen that mix those two up. You can be really good and have bad things happen, and you can be really bad and have good things happen. And that's talked about in the Bible, and that becomes a bit of a mystery. So I think understanding grace and that some things, God has his own path for a lot of that stuff. It's not just, if I do all the right things, I'm going to have good stuff. Yeah. That's not the motivator that I came away with. So,
yeah, and for us, when my wife Sarah and I, as we were figuring out what we were going to do with with our family and our kids, Sarah grew up doing Santa and believing in Santa and all the presents from Santa, and I didn't, and so we had to kind of work that out. But one of the problems that I have with Santa is that he is very similar to God, but different in a couple crucial ways. Like he sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows when you've been bad or good.
But in this humanity version of him, that's a little creepier than what we do with the God way, just to say.
He's stalking you, no.
Pretty much.
And so I didn't want to raise my kids believing in this invisible being who blesses their obedience, and then find out that it wasn't true. When I'm trying to teach them to trust this invisible being who loves them and shows grace to them. And so it was like there were enough overlaps that I'm like, I don't want to do that. But we also don't go to the other extreme of thinking like, growing up, I had a lot of friends in the church who like their families like Santa is how Satan spells his name when he wants to trick you.
There's some of those.
And so the way that we settle on it is kind of the middle road. I think similar to what you guys do, that Santa for us is just one of the trappings of the season. That the holiday is about Jesus and his birth and his love for us. But we have a Christmas tree and jingle bells. And the other night we watched Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer as a family. And it's just kind of one of those tinsel things that we just have around, but we don't believe in Santa. We don't have presents from Santa.
One other thing I would say about kind of the idea of just doing it simply and plainly and explaining to kids so that, it's not a bad thing, it's not a good thing, it's just part of kind of how some people relate to the holiday, is I think one of the benefits that can have is a couple things. It can remove confusion when kids encounter other folks who think differently. And secondly, it can help in dealing with family. Where if you have family that are big on the Santa thing, and so they go to grandma's house and it's big on Santa there, and if you deal with it kind of more plainly and simply as a part of just kind of what Christmas is about for how some people think about it, then I think it helps your kids be able to be in that environment, understand what's going on, and not kind of either be confused by it or offend your grandparents or whatever.
Yeah.
And my Caleb is in first grade, so he's kind of right in that, like all the kids in his class talking about Santa and stuff. So we had to have, the talk.
How to engage. Yeah.
And the way that we handled that, the way I handled that with him was like, look, so some kids, a lot of your friends might believe that Santa's real, and that's part of what they do for Christmas. And we framed this not as a like true or not true, or but as a kindness and unkindness. That is, so we said it'd be unkind for you to be like, Santa's not real. And so just say, if they're talking about Santa, just let them talk about Santa, and that's okay. We know that Christmas is about Jesus, but we don't want to spoil Christmas for anybody else. That's unkind.
Yeah, that makes sense. So on that whole kind or unkind trust kind of thing, as believers, and the parent-child relationship, if we want to look at this biblically, for other principles, where I think honesty and not lying is something that's brought up in Scripture. When it comes to issues like this, where we're just talking about generic cultural engagement, with something that seems lighthearted, if you want to handle it however you handle it, supposedly bringing joy to your family, your children during this time. If you're engaging this at the level where you are telling your kids this is true, this is a real person, he does exist, there is a North Pole, he's watching, he's doing all these things, these factual statements, about something like this, that as adults, we would engage differently because we know, regardless of how we were brought up, as believers, what is kind of the line there? I mean, are we crossing a line here where this becomes something that we're being dishonest? Are we lying to our kids? Is this a sinful thing, even though it's supposed to bring about something good and joyous and lighthearted? And even I'll go so far as to ask, have you seen results for young people that have grown up with that kind of an approach to then find out that he's not real? How have you seen that?
He's not.
I know, I'm going to break the bubble because I'm going to ask the question. I know, he dropped his papers and everything. Are you all right? That was very dramatic. To find out that he's not real, how does that affect the parent-child trust relationship for something like that? How have you seen that play out?
Thanks.
No one wants to take that.
And I certainly can't say I've taken a poll on this, and of course we raised them just saying, listen, we're not going to, we're telling you Jesus is true and Santa's not, and we're, and I think as we're a people of the truth, that's what we're always looking for. We read a book that is the truth, and so I can't say that I have any statistics that says, well, if you've told your kids that Santa's not true, then they're just not going to believe anything you say. I think
This is how to shipwreck your kids'
Santa's
faith.
not it. That's it. I'm done.
Everything you've ever said is a lie.
Yeah, that's right. Because again, I think I don't want to be on the panel on Easter, but we can cover that later. But if a lot of these things where I don't know that that's some gigantic, that's an absolute no. But I just think it's one of those many bricks in the wall that we build. In the foundation of our kids' lives, and I think it's something we want to be always, promoting the truth. If someone's decided that that's the direction that they want to go with their children, who am I to judge? But I just know my conviction is to promote the truth and to use every opportunity I get to share the all the positive things about our faith. Now, if I'm approaching another set of parents and they're doing something like that, from an evangelical standpoint, I don't think that's the best avenue to share my faith. To say, oh, so your kids are telling you must be going to hell. So let me tell you about Jesus. I'm not sure that's maybe the softest angle to take.
Probably not.
Yeah, but that's the choice that they've made.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm torn by the question because on one hand it feels like obviously I should be telling my kids the truth, and like George said, we're people of truth, want to raise our kids to know and believe the truth. I also do think that in the Christian life there's a place for imagination and wonder, which I think is probably the argument on the other side. And so, like, I don't know, we do the tooth fairy with our kids because I feel like that's like that's not encroaching on Jesus' turf.
Let's close in prayer.
Before we go too far and we can't come back.
And the other day,
what's a tooth worth these days?
Way too much inflation, I'm telling you.
Inflation is bad, I've heard. Yeah. Glad all those teeth are out.
And the other day, Caleb and I went in the woods hunting for Bigfoot. And so.
I've got a TV show to turn you on.
And so, to me, those are more vehicles to help my kids interact with wonder and joy in the world. Mm-hmm. And so I don't see that as a bad thing. I don't know. George thinks I'm a sinner. So.
Well, I do, but that has nothing to do with the story that you told me.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm torn by the question.
Okay. I mean, again, this isn't the content. The content is not, I think we've agreed at this point, the content itself is not blatantly evil as it stands. So this is more about engagement of how something's handled, if there's a line in that, than it is about, oh, don't ever speak of these things or, we need to pretend they don't exist. I think it becomes a question of how far, if there's too far, is too far.
Yeah. And our kids were raised on the Chronicles of Narnia, so it's we know imagination and things like that. And so I can understand your position.
Okay. So for the parents that do want to do Santa, final thoughts, advice for them. I mean, you guys have kind of already said that you would engage, but lean towards what's true. Try to make that biblical connection. Is there any other advice you would give to someone who does want to engage the Santa?
Yeah, so I think if you're raising your kids and you're doing like believing in Santa and presents from Santa, all that, I think the impetus on you in discipling your kids is to put more emphasis on Jesus, because we can go wrong with this in the holidays apart from Santa, where the emphasis can be on the presents and not Jesus. But I think if you're going to do Santa, I think you need to consciously counterbalance that with the reason for the season.
I guess the only thought that popped in my head was there's going to be a point of revelation, and I think you want to be ahead of that and intentional about that before they're 18, probably somewhere around there. But I think
I'm pretty sure a friend would have ruined it before 18.
Okay,
if you wait that
send
late,
them over to the
it's
Sharps.
over.
One of those girls is going to wreck it for you.
So there's going to be a sleepover, and someone's going to blow it.
I have a funny story here. So when I taught sixth grade, taught sixth grade for a number of years, and my first year teaching sixth grade, the very last day before Christmas break, I thought, it would be a really fun little history lesson to learn the history of how we've gotten to Santa Claus with like Coca-Cola and St. Nicholas.
I hear a car crash coming.
Words he thought.
It did not even cross my mind that a sixth grader would still believe in Santa. I just thought, this would be a fun history lesson. And I got an email from a parent that night being like,
Thanks a
my
lot.
daughter came home being like, Mom, I need to talk to you.
Yeah, you don't want to be
Oops.
that person. It was not a good day for Brendan.
Or a student.
That too. Or that parent, for that matter. That's probably not a good day. Final thoughts from you for parents that do want to do Santa? Nothing to add? All right. So what advice would you give, because we briefly touched on this, but we didn't really get into it, to the parents who are very anti-Santa? If you're on the other kind of extreme end of this spectrum where you would lean towards feeling like this is just an evil thing that really sucks the truth out of this holiday and you don't typically want to have anything to do with that and you feel like that would be wrong, or maybe you're not all the way on that extreme, but maybe you feel like Santa is just not something that you should be participating in. What would you give in advice to a parent on that end of the spectrum?
What I would say is, I agree with or am sympathetic to those principles. However, this is an issue where, and like a lot of issues, sometimes we take our principles and conscience and make them a law that we try to impose on other people. Romans 14:15 talk about this. And so I go read Romans 14:15, and the thing is, the reality is all those principles about Santa and truth and Jesus, like that's all true. But the Bible does not give us prescriptions as to how to celebrate Christmas, what to do and what not to do. There's no celebration of Christmas in the Bible. And so any principles that we are bringing to this are at the level of conscience that believers can disagree with. So don't judge other people. That's what I'd say to the anti-Santa crowd is you are not permitted to judge or enforce your view of conscience on other people on this issue.
Good. Other thoughts?
I could say whatever I want since my kids aren't here and won't disagree with how I handled it back then. Because I think I was one of those more vehement people, I at least internally or with the family or something like that. So I think I wore my convictions out on my sleeve a little bit more than I should have. But I think where I would stand now is I think I would trust in a sovereign God. Where wherever they are in their convictions and their understanding, that's where God has them. I certainly can lovingly talk to them if it's something that they're open to, but God's the author of truth, and I'm going to go ahead and let Him take care of that. So,
cool. Thoughts from you? No? Yes?
No, I would agree with what Brendan said. I think, we're all called to honor our conscience in things like that, and because anything that's not from faith is sin. So if we believe something's wrong, for us it's wrong. Mm-hmm. But I would agree that doesn't give us the right to impose it on other people. Now, that doesn't mean we can't change our thinking or grow in how we relate to things like this, or, change our views as time goes on. But I think, if we believe something is not right, I think God would call us to honor that in our conscience in the way we handle it. Mm-hmm. But if it is in that matter of disputable or debatable issues that aren't clearly spelled out in Scripture, then I think we're called to give charity to others who may think differently.
Okay. So before we close out on the topic of Santa himself, to avoid gobbling up too much time with us talking about what we know about the real Santa and kind of connecting that to the holiday and in more of a biblical sense, does anyone have any recommended resources or places to look, books, anything that might be able to direct people if they don't have that information? How did you guys?
The true story of Saint Nicholas.
That kind
of thing?
Where would you go to get a good background on that if you do want to incorporate that in, and maybe that's something you don't have thus far?
I always go to Google because if it's on the internet, it's true.
Such a safe answer.
Yeah. I think there's a new movie out called Fat Man.
Don't do this. Don't do this.
It kind of reworks the whole Santa thing.
Rework is a key word there. So for the biblical, or not biblical, but the true way of Santa, do you guys have any recommendations of anything you've used or anything you've looked at Or if you want to give a brief summary, I'll accept that, but I don't know how brief it'll be, so.
I don't, to be honest, like that's.
Yeah. Well, whenever I looked at
your
it,
own
it's
research.
so old. What we can do is, because we're some of the like book titles and things we'll put up, we'll post with the video. So we'll put something up there.
All right, so we'll put some resources up in the comments
section,
or
whatever.
something in the video feed so that people can have some resources for something like
Or
that.
if you're watching, it's like if you have some cool, like, text it in.
That too. You can always text in because we will read those.
So are you talking about resources specifically to address how to deal with the issue of relating
Not
to
as much how to
Santa?
deal with it, more about the true story of St. Nicholas. So
Saint
that
Nicholas,
somebody can
okay.
actually incorporate that into their Santa
Yeah,
engagement.
somewhere in those crates back in the basement.
I know,
there's
for us
probably-
that's a dangerous ask because it's somewhere in the house, but do we know what or where? No, it's been some years since we dealt with that, but all right, well, we'll go ahead and put those links in there afterwards so that people can have something like that. So next question, just generically, how would we think about the overlap of the secular and the sacred in the holiday season of Christmas? How, as a believer, do you want to engage? Because there's more than just Santa. There's a lot of other things that are out there that I'm sure are not coming straight out of the Christmas story that's in the Bible. So how do we think about those things, and how do we engage some of that? Do we completely shut that stuff out? Do we want to try to be choosy what we bring in? Do we want to be a history buff and dig into everything so that we can make sure it's legit and we have all the facts? What do we do?
I sort of have
Let's just let the geek answer that. Go ahead.
a principle, a thought, kind of the bigger thought of Christmas that I connect to this. Because this question of the sacred and the secular is way more than just Santa. It's everything from Christmas trees, which were originally kind of a Norse pagan, bring in the evergreen boughs at the midwinter solstice to keep the spirits alive, or to Yule logs, to jingle bells, to even the date of Christmas itself was set as kind of a competition to like the feast of Saturnalia. And so there's lots of those kinds of questions of how do we think about all those things. And I like to
realize people are sitting in their living rooms now looking at their Christmas trees, and you're just sucking the life right out of them.
Yes, your pagan Christmas trees. But the thing is that when you think about the incarnation, what Christmas means, the incarnation is about not the divide between the sacred and the secular, but that the sacred has hopped over that fence, lain down in the dirt with the secular, and is making it all his. And so it makes sense to me, really, in that kind of theological framework, that that Christmas would take over the feast of Saturnalia. You know, Saturn is dead, Jesus is alive, and so he is claiming it all as his own. And so it's not that all of those secular things get thrown out, they all become his. And so I can, with faith, put up my Christmas tree and sing jingle bells, and I suppose even if you want to, leave out milk and cookies for Santa, because it all belongs to Jesus.
Yeah, I come from the same position when I hear about the sacred and the secular. I really struggle with that. I think about 1 Corinthians 6, where I've been bought with a price, and not half of me, not some of my time, not Sunday afternoons or Sunday mornings. So to me, when I've been purchased, everything's been made sacred. So I go by a real kind of simple set of rules, and if it's drawing me closer to Jesus and it's drawing me closer to my faith, then I focus on that. If it's pulling me away, then either I abandon it or I have to reevaluate it. And I don't abandon everything. Well, that's not the Christmas tree isn't drawing me to Jesus. Well, what are we doing with that? And we've made it sort of like just a family remembrance of different things, and buying our kids Christmas ornaments every year so that they can remember all the things that they were focused on in different years. So again, it's what are we doing to tell the story, and some of those things can be purchased back and be redeemed to do that.
Yeah, and to bring a little bit more biblical stuff into this, 1 Corinthians 10, Paul addresses this sacred-secular divide with a different issue. The issue the Corinthians were raising was meat sold in the marketplace was sort of a participation in some of like the pagan idolatry. It was sacrificed idols and they put it on sale. And so the Christians were like, can I do that? Can I participate in this economy that has all these connections to pagan idolatry? And Paul's answer is fascinating. Paul's answer is not withdraw into your own little Christian commune, start up some more Chick-fil-A's where it can be Jesus meat.
Easy.
You know, it is. Chick-fil-A is Jesus' chosen meat, but
Do not assault the Lord's chicken. This is not acceptable.
His answer is you don't need to raise any issues of conscience here because the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. It doesn't matter what they did with that meat. It all belongs to Jesus. And so he says, so partake with thankfulness. And so that's really how I view the overlap of the sacred and the secular, is that it all belongs to Jesus. And so if I can participate with faith and thankfulness, kind of like what you were saying, then go for it.
But if the faith or thankfulness bit is robbed from you in some matter of conscience, then you would say...
Then Romans 14, if whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. If you can't do that with a heart of faith and thankfulness, then you shouldn't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think when I think of sacred and secular related to Christmas, I think a lot of things depends on how you position them. You know, you can position, like when you all were little, we had a whole thing we did with the Christmas tree, and but we assigned our own symbolism to it. The Christmas tree represented, it's an evergreen, it's eternal life. The lights are Jesus' light of the world. You kind of do with it what you position it how you want to. But when I think of the secular, I think, to me, that one of the biggest dangers in the Christmas season where the secular presses in is in the busyness and the obligations associated with the Christmas season. I got to get a gift for this person. I don't even like them, but they got a gift for me. And, that is what bothers me.
The truth comes out, yeah.
Well, let's
He's
be
all of
honest.
us.
That's kind of what bothers me the most, where it feels like the secular kind of can overwhelm the sense of what Christmas is about.
No, I think it is that time drain of there's all these different things we have to do, whether it's get gifts or write cards or print mailing labels, which I guess we don't do anymore because now everything goes online. But there is some level of performance. I've got to meet people at a certain level. I've got to, it's not just, well, he got me a gift last year, but it's like he got me a gift and it was probably around $25 to $30, so I need to get something at least that. And wow, just talk about sucking the life out of something for you, as opposed to saying, let's just really just enjoy what this time is and all the things that it means to us. And we can get done what we can get done, and we're not going to get stressed about it. So.
Yeah, and just, to balance that out, there is a reality that we all have families, and, we're trying to kind of meet a lot of expectations during this season. But I think that's kind of what feels like, because, the old kind of picture of, we get irritated out buying presents for people, because we're so stressed and busy about the holiday season. Well, something doesn't feel right in that reality.
Yeah, and I wonder if, I think this might be a good opportunity, because if that's kind of where you're at, to reflect on what's going on in the heart, maybe take that to the Lord, because is there a performance being driven by fear of man, that I have to look a certain way and perform a certain way and get that same gift, that same level of gift, and I'm worried about what other people think, because that drives us to anxiety and exhaustion. Because if that's where you are, then I'd say examine your heart to figure out what your motives are there and ask God to help change those motives, because you could do all the same things, but if it's from a motive of blessing other people and enjoying family, then those things aren't as burdensome anymore. So I think if you find it a burden, check your motives.
Yeah, I do not find the lines at the stores on Black Friday as a place of worship for me. It just doesn't draw me towards God, so I try to avoid that. But I think there's a performance, there's a comparison, and they are just the thief of joy, as I've been told.
So, along those lines, what are some good ways to try to reorient yourself towards keeping Christ at the center of Christmas, and really reorienting your heart and your mind in all of these moments? Because these are all the little moments that happen leading up to the holiday and during, and even sometimes after. I know there can be people who experience kind of a Christmas crash, where after, everything is done, it's not just I'm relieved because all that stuff, is over. It's the drain of the buildup of joy and anticipation for that day, when really what we celebrate in Christmas biblically is all year long. It's not really isolated to that day. And sometimes that can feel like, am I in a not good heart place if I'm experiencing this crash so heavily that I'm really tanking, like I'm frustrated to start a new year because I just want Christmas back? So how do you fight for that? What are some
That's
good
actually
ways?
the credit card bill coming due. That's when that crash occurs.
That's part of the crash.
I thought it was when you opened up that box and there were socks in it.
Some people love socks.
Or need them.
Yes.
We actually had a conversation in our community group a while back about this, and it was that sense of expectations, that we had these expectations, and then you get to the end of it and you go, Christmas is over, we've done everything we're going to do, and my expectations weren't met. And there was something there that wasn't just, hey, could I just enjoy the season? Could I just enjoy my family? Could I enjoy this topic? What's going on? And they missed that. And I think that's sometimes where that crash happens, that depression of like, now I got to wait another 364 days to get to this and try to achieve the unachievable again.
Yeah, and I think the anticipation of Christmas always outweighs the reality of it. And to me, there's a lesson there that in a fallen world, the things that we put our hope in never quite measure up. And Romans 8, that this whole creation is groaning into these chains of futility. That means that the reality never matches the expectation. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned there, that don't fix your eyes on these things, but on Jesus himself, who doesn't disappoint.
So to get to your question, which we haven't yet.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
I have noticed. Yeah, go for it.
So I think what we tried to do, and I went back and interviewed my kids, and they kind of said the same thing. Is there's a story here. There's a message. There's a truth, and every chance we got, we would try to weave that in or live that out. So to keep that, keep Christ in Christmas, that's what we kept doing. Like I talked, we would, relive the nativity scene, or there's certain books that we had, and I brought a couple of them that were mentioned, and I think we can focus in on these.
Maybe not. Let's read our title and author real quick, just in case.
Oh, okay. The Donkey's Dream by Barbara Helen Berger.
Okay.
And we'll put these on that link, wherever that link ends up being. And The Tale of Three Trees by...
I've heard of that one.
Yes, I remember that one.
Illustrations by Angela Hunt.
Okay.
And there's just a whole bunch of books that we would read. And my kids were talking about it because, and those, all the Christmas decorations would come out of the boxes, and then and then those books came out of the box. And I was like, those are the books that we only read during this time. And they referenced the Christmas message or something like that, and gave it in a very, very different and creative way. And one of my daughters was talking, and then at the end of the Christmas season, those books went back into the box, and they went back into the attic or basement or whatever, and we didn't get to see them. So it was that special kind of, those were the special, the books that we would really enjoy because it was about this. So I think to me, it was the story. What's the message? Keep that out there.
Yeah.
Okay. And some other books here. This Pastor Eric gave me these, and because he and I are kind of in the same season of little kids at home, things that you can do with your kids. My Merry Christmas by Sally Lloyd Jones, who did the Jesus Storybook Bible. I love all of her stuff, and this book is kind of, it's some of the same things of taking the secular trappings of Christmas and imbuing them with sacred meaning for little kids. Jesus Came for Me. It's a board book, but is maybe aimed a little bit more at like young elementary kids.
Okay.
God Gave Us Christmas. Just some of those special things. Books to read with your kids. But I also think for us, I think a way that you can try to keep your focus on Christ is Christmas, like month of December, can be a good time to mix up what you're doing in your devotionals. Pick something that helps you see afresh the glory of Christmas. I think, I know I say this a lot, but Christmas can become so routine to us, the story so familiar, the song so familiar, that we lose the glory and the message that's there. And so there's a lot of good Christmas resources, devotionals to help you do that. Like this one by Paul David Tripp, "Come Let Us Adore Him." Good stuff there. So all these we're gonna put on a link somewhere afterwards. But December might be a month to mix up that, find a good devotional, do something different for a couple weeks.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. All right, so what do we think about the war on Christmas? And what, as believers, is a good way to kind of fight that battle? I know one of the things in our questions that's brought up is even just this concept of happy holidays versus Merry Christmas, and the way that Christ can kind of feel like he's trying to get pulled out of the holiday season so it becomes just a holiday and not Christmas as we would like to know it. So what do we lose by different choices and how we fight that battle? And what would you recommend?
I'm going to let these guys answer first because I have thoughts, but I want to see what you guys say first.
Well, first of all, whenever I'm in a war, I like to be on the winning side, and the best news is we win in the end. So I'm a whole lot less worried. That war doesn't stress me out because Jesus has gone ahead of us, and we're gonna win this war. But I think the other thing is when I think about wars, most of them are occurring in my own heart. And so, whether somebody says Happy Holidays to me or, Merry Christmas, if I'm getting all bent out of shape, I'm like, what is it that I have to prove? What is it that I have to defend here that isn't, that God isn't going to defend himself? And so I think the only war that I have to battle is the war of my own drift in my own heart. Maybe these things can contribute to that drift, but only if I let them. So I think I'm just constantly thinking, how do I keep my heart in the right place? How can I build a foundation within my family? How can I create a fertile field in my family's activities that draw them into the Christmas season in all the right ways? And if somebody wants to say Happy Holidays because they don't want to offend one of our Jewish brothers and sisters because it's Hanukkah or something else, God bless them.
Yeah, I guess first I would say, number one, I'm not surprised by it. I don't know that I expect the world we live in to exalt Christ, and that they're going to do that. And when I think, kind of biblically about that, I think throughout biblical history, the people of God have often lived in cultural contexts that did not recognize their faith, that didn't in any way, acknowledge that culturally. And the way that they kept those faith traditions alive was among themselves and in their families. And so to me, I don't know that that's too much different from the world we live in now. I don't put my hope in, the government recognizing Christmas as a,
Or the cultural embrace of Christ.
Yeah. So it doesn't surprise me as we drift further and further away from, being a country where our moral values are more closely associated with Christian values as in the past. That drift kind of continues to create a greater divide. So I don't know that it's a war that I personally feel the need to fight.
So you're not concerned that there's some great loss on the other side of this if for some reason that's a battle that isn't fought tooth and nail? Like, is there something that we sacrifice? And let me broaden the question a little bit here before you answer, because I know you had thoughts, but I want to add this to what you give me. Thinking missionally, as a witness specifically, because this is another question that we have. If you are thinking as a missionary during this time and you're thinking about bringing the message of the gospel to people, is there something in particular that we lose in sacrificing on some of these maybe little hills that feel like they're making a mountain, in how we either engage with the culture, people that we know, our families, whatever it may be? Is there something, how are we thinking on mission as we approach those types of things? Because I don't think the concern is just, does it impact me? I think some of the concern that people have in that is, well, am I being a good witness? Am I sacrificing something on that front where God is not going to either be seen or he's not going to shine? And is that right or wrong? So let me add that to the question as before you go in. And you guys can come back if you want.
I'll use that to start my thoughts.
Okay, go for it.
I'm going to turn that question on its head. I think missionally, we lose if we fight this battle.
Okay.
I think that's
Elaborate.
the way to lose the missional battle, by fighting a war for Christmas, because our mission is not to reclaim or save some Christian version of America. Our mission is not to make sure that unregenerate pagans say Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays. And in fact, if we make that our mission, we lose the gospel and we lose the opportunity to actually witness to people who don't know Jesus. And so if they know us as those angry people who get mad when people say Happy Holidays, we are not representing Jesus well. And so so my thought is, if you're concerned about the war on Christmas, all right, this is probably going to get me in trouble. Turn off Fox News and take a chill pill. 93% of Americans celebrate Christmas. I don't think we're in danger of losing this war. And of course, what people mean by the war on Christmas is Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, taking down public nativity scenes,
Or just Xmas. I know that one was a big stink. Because
Okay, so
if we just hack the word Christ out, apparently that X is just evil.
I'm glad you said that, because Sarah and I just had this, I thought, really funny conversation
Or
the
we
other
can't
day.
be burdened to write the Christ part because our hand is tired, and so X and Mass is what we're going for.
So Sarah grew up her whole life hearing in school and stuff how that was a war on Christmas and taking Christ out of Christmas, making Xmas. That's not true. The X is the short for the Greek title for Christ, Christos, and so it's literally going all the way back to long time ago. That's an abbreviation for Christ Mass, is Xmas.
Okay.
It's not a war on Christmas. And so Sarah just found this out 2 days ago, and she was so mad that she had been lied to. And she was like, all this time I felt guilty every time I said Xmas, I'm taking Christ out of Christmas, and it's not true.
Well, actually, this
Just
brings
how
up
you feel when you find out there's no Santa, right?
This brings up a really good point, though, because for her, as far as her knowledge base goes, and possibly what a lot of other people are out there utilizing that X for, is not what you just said, because I would be curious how many people know what you just said. So, I'm just saying, I would be wondering how many people really know that.
Thinking of the state of Maryland, maybe one.
Yeah, so we're talking about a gesture or a tradition or something that keeps happening that could potentially have two drastically different motivations and reasonings behind the execution of something.
Yeah, and so the way I think about that is I'm not really worried about what your motivation is. If you want to take Christ out of Christmas, okay, he still wins in the end. And in the meantime, I think this debate of Happy Holidays, Merry Christmas, Xmas, I think it is a signal of this shifting cultural landscape that our culture is increasingly post-Christian. But to me, that's what our mission field is. So for a couple of years, my wife and I, we lived in Mount Washington, Baltimore City, which is a very heavily Orthodox Jewish neighborhood. Almost all of our neighbors, Orthodox Jewish. So, at the grocery store, it wasn't Christmas decorations, it was Hanukkah decorations. And so, you know what, I said Happy Holidays, or even like Happy Hanukkah if I knew this person was Jewish, and that's that's okay, because that's where they're at. And so so really, I think instead of being angry or fearful about this shifting cultural landscape, or fighting to keep some wrapping paper of religiosity over people's secular hearts, let's just embrace the mission field that God has given us and go out into the world not as angry culture warriors, but with good news of great joy.
Yeah, a question. What's the point? And we're not to go out and make Christmas celebrants of all people. We're supposed to make disciples of all people. The gospel has advanced faster when it's at odds with a culture, and because there are great doors that are open. And so all these different situations are just other opportunities where you go, Lord, how do I tell them the story? Because we've got the best story, we've got the truth, and whatever they decide to say when they, if I fight that, I think you're right. If you fight that battle, you've lost the war.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to maybe balance this a little bit is, as someone who's probably older and lived through that transition, more than younger people may have. There is a sadness that I would say that I feel in seeing that shift in our, in our country and our nation towards more and more of a post-Christian culture. Not that my hope was ever in the culture, but I don't think it's a bad thing to want your country, your government, your nation to do righteously, act righteously, follow righteous things. So I can appreciate people who want to see the culture more in line with Christian values and principles and beliefs. I just don't know that the Bible says that's the way things are gonna that Jesus is gonna conquer. So that's why I say I'm not surprised, but there is a little bit of a sadness to see that change, in the country I live in.
Yeah.
And even though I'm over here on the other side, I think it's okay to be sad about that. It's okay to miss something that was lost, because something has been lost. It's just at the same time, because that's not our mission, we dare not sacrifice our gospel witness in order to get something that is less than our mission.
Yeah.
And that comes from the guy wearing the dinosaur Santa
Yeah,
sweater.
he's completely decked out over there. But on that same note, I would think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's kind of hope in this argument as well, because our celebration of Christmas is really not in what's happening right now. It's about what's already been done.
Yep.
And what's already accomplished. And it's really not in any of the gestures. It's not in ours. It's not in somebody else's gesture for the holiday. It's not really any of these things. Arguably, if we didn't celebrate Christmas with any of our traditions, it wouldn't change what's already been done and what Christmas truly is. So, you could argue that if that's kind of where your mind is going, then maybe you're not looking fully at what we're really celebrating here. That maybe we're getting a little off course. Not that these things don't matter, because I think they are a reflection of, where people are at and what's going on. But I'm sure there are people somewhere in the world that would love to celebrate Christmas for what it truly means in what's already happened, that can't even display that publicly because it would put them at risk. And that has nothing to do with culture. That's just, I cannot talk about what Christ has accomplished in this time, in his coming to us as a baby, because if I start displaying or talking about that, I'm going to have a problem. Like, someone's going to come after me for that.
Yeah. And really the good news of Christmas is that God has broken into this darkened world. Light has shined, and he is victorious. God and sinners have been reconciled. Jesus is alive. And so whatever the cultural conditions around us, we have an unstoppable king and an unstoppable message. And we really do have good news and great joy, regardless of whether people like us or not, whether they agree with us or not, or wear the same kind of cultural trappings as us. Jesus is alive, so we can rejoice.
Yeah, and also freedom in that, because our witness is not really what saves people, and it's not really what draws people. And I think as Christians, with some of these debates, it can be really easy to fall into this like performance trap of, if we don't represent perfectly well, that somehow Christ's mission and goal is not going to be accomplished. And really, that's completely unbiblically a way to think. I think it's so much more about he delivers and completes his mission in spite of our imperfect witness. And I think it's easy for us to think that once we're saved, that somehow we're better. And we're really not. Our witness is not that much more improved. It's just that he shines through us. So if you want him to shine through you, I think that's a great desire. But I don't think for thinking that there are moments where maybe he doesn't, that somehow he's hindered. I think we're shrinking what we're actually claiming we're celebrating here.
Yeah, his kingdom is marching on.
Yeah.
No matter what we call December 25th, his kingdom is marching on.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we don't want to forget that, if we read through the New Testament, the gospel entered cultures where there was no evidence of anything Christian at all. And God worked in that situation to save people, build churches. So God doesn't need a culture that honors Christian values or symbolism in some way to accomplish that. Some people might argue that actually works against the gospel's effectiveness because people get overly familiar with gospel truths in that context. And the good news is, it's just not so good, because you've heard it so many times, it doesn't impact you. But even in that, God is not limited in his ability. I mean, if he can knock a guy off a horse and save him and use him to, transform the world, then I don't think he's limited by the things that we would often think.
Yeah, so if you squeak out a happy holidays, God is not like, man, there it went.
All is lost.
Yeah, I mean, there's hope for all of the things that happen, I think, to be redeemed. And I think if you're feeling that war, I think there should be a lot of peace and hope in that, hope that's brought by this actual season. So that's good. 2 questions left, and hopefully we have time to fit them both in. Might run a little bit over by 5 minutes or so. But in regards to gifts and presents, because I think we briefly touched on this earlier, we have a lot of questions on how to handle the gift-giving aspect of Christmas, especially between parents and kids, not just generically for like coworkers and all that kinds of stuff.
I'm accepting presents between now and the 25th.
Yeah. Brendan will take all your gifts.
Good luck.
Like, how much, if there is a limit, is too much? Is there this line that we can kind of go past where if we overdo it in the gifts department, maybe we're making Christmas a little bit too much about the gifts, or maybe you have very few gifts. Maybe you're a large family and you really can't do excessive presents for every single child because that would just be a lot, And I know there are other families out there, especially ones that have fewer people to give presents to, they might do a ton. I know growing up there was some families that they did so much, I was like, y'all are crazy because this is a lot, and I didn't get anything like that. But that's okay, But
you're
kids,
not bitter.
Wow,
well,
We
it's
can
easy.
tell.
No, it's easy as a kid to think in terms of gifts during this time of year. And even if you don't want it to be about that during the season, you're thinking, our hearts are turned selfishly towards ourselves and what we get out of things. And I think especially for kids, that's very common. So you're looking at those gifts. I think it plays on your heart regardless of your age for some people. So how do you deal with this, and how would we even redeem the gift-giving aspect of Christmas?
Yeah, and that's tricky because, like in our family, Sarah's parents are overboard with the gifts. I guess that's what grandparents are for. I guess.
Scale here, yeah.
A couple things is Sarah and I, for us giving gifts to the kids, we've settled on. I'm going to mess up this little rhyme. It's something you want, something you need, something to wear, something to read. That's what we're going to do for our kids. So grandparents can spoil them however much they want, I guess. But for us, they get something they want, something they need, something to wear, and something to read. So it kind of tones it down a little
We'll
bit.
put that in the notes just to make sure we've got the,
Sure, okay.
the little rhythm there.
And
the rhyme.
the other thing is I'm excited about this because my kids are finally starting to get old enough to understand really the concept of getting gifts for other people. Because when your kids are really little, they don't really get that. But Caleb's in first grade and he has an allowance now. He got some money for his birthday. And so yesterday, Sarah took him out to Five Below to spend some of his own money on, gift. Like apparently he got me a present and he got his teacher a present, and I think using it to encourage that and to praise that and to point out the joy of giving, I think is a good counterbalance for your kids in a season that's all about getting.
Other thoughts?
I know for a few years I've been trying to sell my family on a particular philosophy of gift giving at Christmas.
Yes, he has.
There's 3 of us, in the household. We're all adults. So my philosophy is let's everybody give each other $100.
And just
Heck, we'll make
pass it to the
$500.
right.
Make
This
it
is his plan.
$1,000.
Stand in a circle, pass to the right, and it's over. Merry Christmas.
You do the math, it all works out in the end. But I haven't been able to
lamest thing
sell
I've
them
ever
on
heard.
that approach. So
No, you know why? I can tell you why. Because I
Okay,
think
kids.
as a reflection, even, and maybe this is an argument, maybe even a little more away from Santa, but I think as a parent, especially I would think, because I know I'm experiencing this, I'm not even a parent, there is something about the joy of gift giving to bestow that to a kid that I think is special. And I think it's very remnant of God the Father's love.
Apparently
and
not.
I don't want to ruin that. I don't want to walk out.
Don.
and I wouldn't have promoted that when they were kids. It's only since they're adults
is
that I've
true.
tried to package that. But yeah, I think the biggest problem, and when you've got little kids, it's a lot easier. It's easier to know kind of what kids want and find things that, and everybody has to decide what's reasonable and how many extended family members you have and how that's all going to work. I think, I don't know. We were kind of a strange household, and I don't know why it
see that.
is.
It's
But
shocking.
our kids slept in on Christmas Day.
This is true.
Literally.
Really?
Since they were little, they were never really into the whole gift thing, even though they got gifts.
And when we did get up, it was about Christmas breakfast before it was about the presents.
So
That I
our
can appreciate.
experience
Still
is
that
probably
way?
a little unusual in that regard, and I was grateful for it. It wasn't bad, but I think our biggest problem now in this season of life is nobody wants anything. It's the hardest thing is coming up with some idea for people to give us a gift. But I think when your kids are little, I would agree that I think, this season is an opportunity to bless people. And whether it's your family or other people, I think if that's your heart going into it, that you want to bless people. And then, you can do that reasonably and thoughtfully. And sometimes I think it's not how much money you spend, it's the thoughtfulness behind the gift that says the most.
Yeah. So at the kids' school, they apparently this last week there was a little Christmas shop where they could go and buy things, and Zoe, our 3-year-old, I think bought me and Sarah a bag of cotton balls.
How sweet.
I did.
Just
I
incredibly
think she
touching.
thought they were marshmallows, but so if you talk about lame presents, Sarah, mute the TV. It's that's even worse than socks. But she's so excited. She's so excited to wrap it, to put it in our stocking, to wait for us to open it, and that's the heart that I want to cultivate in my kids. That joy of giving, even if it's cotton balls.
Yeah, and I know as a kid, I remember, especially for you, because you're very hard to give a gift for, I've given some really crappy presents over the years. But I think he appreciated the heart that, just like what you're saying, that you would want to give something and that you would try. So I think that is worth rewarding. And if you're, for some reason, if you're a parent and you're concerned what if I go overboard and I make my kids somehow materialistic, or I make them shallow in this? Just something to consider. I don't think God thinks about blessing you that way. I don't think he is reluctant to bless you because he's worried he's going to steer you the wrong way. I think it's more about how he cares. But
Yeah, shallow or bitter, because I think the other side is I didn't get enough. And so my wife took one of our grandkids to Five Below to do the same thing and found out that the dog got the largest present. But that's, but
How does that make you feel?
So I went.
speaking of bitter,
Yeah, that's right. No, the dog's fine. I had a phone call with each one of my kids talking about Christmas memories, Christmas traditions, just getting ready for this, and was taking just lots and lots of notes. And at the end, a few minutes later, it kind of hit me. I was like, you know what? Nobody said anything about, oh, the best Christmas was when I got the bike or the doll or the this or that, or it wasn't the worst Christmas was when I didn't get the bike or the doll or something. As a matter of fact, gifts weren't mentioned at all. I mean, they went through, we sort of had a process. It was like we'd get up, we'd open stockings, we'd have breakfast, we'd wait till the family get there and open gifts. So they knew the process that we went through, but it was like, oh my gosh, I remember. And then there was this, and I won't go into it, but this little kind of funny gift thing we did with stockings with my mother-in-law. And they would talk about, oh, then we go to the dollar store, we buy all these things, we do. So they talk about the process. But, and I say this because I think we get stressed out about, it'll be a lousy Christmas if they don't get the skateboard or the this or the, And you know what? Wait, ask them on Valentine's Day, what'd you get for Christmas? And there'll be this long delay. And it's kind of like who won the Super Bowl last year. And it's like, I don't know, but I had to be at the game. I had to watch the game. I had to watch the game, but I can't tell you who won.
Yeah.
It'll come to me, but.
All right.
Say something.
I mean, I think there are some things to be alert to as a parent that can reveal some things in your kids that you would want to be aware of. I mean, I think, you can, if you picture kind of the classic scene of your child opening a gift, just going from one gift to the other, there's no thankfulness to anybody for anything. It's all about kind of, what else is for me? I think there are things that that might be on display that you would want to try to, disciple your kids in. But really, gift giving, is like so many other things in Christmas. It's a great opportunity to connect it to the story.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I honestly don't know what the history of gift giving around Christmas is. Brendan, you might, I don't know. But to me, giving gifts is all about the gift. Right. That God first gave. We give gifts because God gave the greatest gift of all to us. And this is just an expression of our wanting to bless others like he has so blessed us through the gospel. So.
And so we would do things to help grow the kids' gratefulness. Like we would wrap a bunch of empty boxes and we go through a list of all the things that they did wrong. And then we'd throw a box into the fireplace.
This is worse than coal.
Yes.
Arguably.
We just throw those in there and say, okay. But
remember that time?
But we're not, this is not performance oriented, all right? So you'll still get some gifts.
The devastation. Oh my gosh. Parenting tips for George. If you, text in, if you have complaints, anything to say.
The gift setting, it is true. And there's two sides to that. There's the gift receiving and how wonderful that is. But there is that gift giving. And it's like, I can't wait. One of my kids, I won't name him, as soon as the gift arrives, it doesn't typically make it to December 25th. He gets so excited, he drives it over. I got to show this to you. You got to open this now. It's like, well, I can wait to, no. And he's just excited about giving the gifts.
Yeah. In some ways, gift giving is kind of like eating a good food or smelling a good smell. Once you've got it, you go, I gotta share it with somebody. You're like, you gotta smell this, or you gotta taste this. Especially if it's a bad smell, because you can't smell a bad smell and not have somebody else smell it. That's just factual.
I got you this horrible present. Look at it.
No, just if you get something and it stinks, you're like, this is the worst smell ever. You've got to smell this. Like, that's often what you hear people say, and it's because you can't experience that alone. You just can't.
I'm going to use that in my next illustration about sharing the gospel.
I mean, maybe
it's kind
that's
of like
just
when there's
me,
a steak stench you want other people to smell.
It's a good stink. That's kind of how I feel like life is. You experience things sensory-wise, and you want someone else to get it. You do. So I think when you get a good gift, you want to share that. You want to experience that and share that with somebody.
Yeah.
But,
Like that story, I don't think I've ever thought of it that way.
yeah, I'm breaking down walls over here. So we are over, but briefly in like 30 seconds for the last question. What is maybe your favorite Christmas tradition that you've either done in the past or that you do now? Very briefly and quickly.
So this is almost more of a Thanksgiving tradition for us, but Thanksgiving night after the turkey has been eaten and stuff, we sit down with our Thanksgiving dessert and watch A Muppet Christmas Carol. And at that point, then it's Christmas, and it's all Christmas from there on out. And that is the best of all of the Christmas carols. I will fight you on that. That is the hill I die on. And yeah, that's my favorite Christmas tradition.
And Muppets aren't real.
The devastation. No.
George's trying to ruin my Christmas over here. So.
All right.
My favorite Christmas tradition is too long to share, but it had to do with us buying these gag gifts for my mother-in-law. And we would do it every year and put it in a stocking, and just to see her face at 73 when she pulled out the pregnancy test that was in there was great.
That's good.
Well, there are a lot of things that come to mind. I mean, I could name the argument we always get into when we're decorating the Christmas tree, things like that. But probably the one that stands out the most, and I should probably let you describe that one, is something that we've done for years called the hunt.
I know what Don's going to say.
I wasn't sure if that would be yours. It would be one of mine. I wasn't sure if it would be yours, though.
It's certainly the one that's the most, has affected our family the most on Christmas.
It's probably fair.
Of all of the unique, sharp household things you've heard today, this is the most unique of them all.
So should I or you give a brief synopsis of what this means? Okay, so basically there is one final present that's under the tree. It's a small box. It holds a clue, and there is a scavenger hunt that takes place across the house. And there's a lot involved in that. It's to find the last gift or two that are hidden somewhere in the house, so you can't just, open everything and be done. Which is probably part of why we eat breakfast first, now that I'm thinking about this, because that would have been a long wait to eat. But anyhow.
Carbo loading before the hunt.
Yeah, it would have passed out, because this can take hours. There have been times it's taken more than Christmas Day. There was one year, I think I went 2 days past Christmas because I could not find this thing. But anyhow, so you go down all these clues. It involves, you can translate languages.
And you've come up with all these clues yourself, right?
Yes, he writes them, and they all rhyme. He's like Dr. Seuss out there, and they're obnoxious clues, some of them, but that's besides the point. But they're there to taunt you and make you aggravated, so you try harder.
I'm just feeling better about my Christmases now.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I enjoyed it, though. I mean, we don't do that much otherwise on Christmas. We don't really travel. We don't do any of that, so.
Because you have no time.
Yeah, that's true. We didn't. But we would spend the rest of Christmas hunting down presents. And me and my sister, the rule is you have to do it together. You're not allowed to hunt independently, and that includes if it goes past Christmas Day. So there was a time I was old enough to actually have a job, and we had to pause it because I had to go to work the next day and then come back and finish the hunt. So, yeah. But anything from dead-end clue routes, there's a clue called an octoclue that it has 8 branch-offs on it, and you have to go down all 8. It's a real gut punch. But anyhow, all kinds of stuff.
And my joy is being able to participate by taunting them throughout the process.
Yes, so he'll just follow you around. If you ever watch the British Bake Off and you see Paul Hollywood kind of walk around the bakers and just stare at them, and they're like, go away, and then he just slinks off, that's pretty much what he does the whole day. And asks what clue you're on. They're numbered, so he knows how far you are. You don't know how far you are. It's a whole thing. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But in closing, we should probably end on that.
Please.
Because we're a little over. So thank you to everyone who's stayed with us this long to hear that story. We will be coming back, I believe, next month with another topic, which is yet to be determined. We are going to do another poll, I believe, for the topic. So
yeah.
stay tuned for that, because we're going to send that out so that you guys can let us know what topic we should do next. So thank you for your time, and thank you to all of you up here.
And happy holidays, everybody.
That's right, and whatever else you may say. So thank you. Bye.